famous last words. Now, this might of course make us think that care is not much different from mindfulness or awareness. And that's true. In fact, in some of the Buddhist commentarial literature, appamada is often included as the seventh step of the Eightfold Path, which is right attention or right mindfulness. There is clearly a sense that care is a carefulness in how we attend to things. It has to do with being present rather than being absent, with being here and fully aware, which we seek in meditation, with finding ourselves and cultivating awareness, as opposed to being forgetful, absent, or drifting off. It comes back to a quality of presence of mind, but I think it's also more than that. Notice that it is the very last word the Buddha uttered, at least according the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. Whether the Buddha actually said them or not, after all, we can't really know. Those around him at the time and subsequent tradition came to consider, or perhaps did, in fact, correctly remember, that this was the point the Buddha made just as he was on the verge of his own death. So clearly appamada, both for the Buddha and for the tradition that immediately followed him, is regarded as a key. That is to say, it is something to be cultivated, something to be developed, and somehow synthesizes everything he taught. Conditions are subject to decay, he famously said. Work out your salvation with care. This has become a rather famous citation, particularly in the version of Rhys Davids, the early English Pali translator, who translated it as, "Work out your salvation with diligence." This is a beautiful English phrase. It's very euphonious. It was borrowed by T.S. Eliot and appears as a line in his play, The Cocktail Party. I can't quite remember the context, but again, it's interesting how that struck Eliot in some way, and I find that it's very striking for me too. Now, we have to be a little bit careful, and here we get into a bit of textual analysis. Work out your salvation with care. Work out your salvation with diligence. In the original Pali, there is no suggestion whatsoever of the idea of salvation. If anything, the text, which is slightly unclear, says proceed onwards, or strive onwards with appamada. Just as Eliot borrowed it for his literary purposes, Rhys Davids is here paraphrasing and subtly transforming a passage from one of the letters to the Corinthians of St. Paul. Some of you are perhaps familiar with where Paul, at least in the standard English translation, says, "Work out your salvation with fear and trembling." I think it's rather a clever shift. Work out your salvation with care, with diligence. However we read that exact phrase, the point of appamada is plainly this idea of care.